This is the moment baseball completely lost control. Not because of a bad pitch. Not because of a heated argument. But because millions of people watching live suddenly realized they were witnessing something far more dangerous than an ordinary MLB fight. Shohei Ohtani was down on the dirt near first base, the Dodgers dugout was emptying onto the field, and 3 Milwaukee Brewers players were still moving toward the chaos while the stadium screamed in disbelief. For a few seconds, nobody even seemed to understand what they were looking at. The commentators stopped talking. The crowd stopped cheering. Even the umpires hesitated before sprinting into the middle of the confrontation. At first, it looked like another emotional baseball moment. But then the replay appeared on the giant screen. And the entire feeling inside the stadium changed instantly. Because what happened to Ohtani did not look accidental anymore. It looked personal. It looked violent. And according to several people inside the Dodgers organization later that night, it crossed a line baseball should never cross. It was supposed to be one of the biggest regular season games of the year. The Dodgers and the Brewers had already spent the first 2 games of the series building tension between each other. Every inning felt heavier than normal. Every close pitch created reactions from both dugouts. And right in the center of everything, as always, was Shohei Ohtani. Earlier in the game, Ohtani had already done what only Ohtani seems capable of doing. He launched a towering home run deep into the night sky, stole a base moments later, and then scored again after forcing Milwaukee's pitcher into another stressful at-bat. From the Brewers' perspective, the game was beginning to feel exhausting. Every mistake became dangerous the moment Ohtani stepped into the frame. Every pitch thrown near him carried pressure. The Dodgers were feeding off the energy in the stadium, and Milwaukee could feel the momentum slowly slipping away from them inning by inning. But then came the 7th inning. And that was when everything changed. The Brewers' pitcher stood on the mound staring toward home plate while Ohtani adjusted his batting gloves with the calm expression people had seen 1,000 times before. Nothing about him looked emotional. Nothing looked aggressive. But the tension around the field had become impossible to ignore. The catcher gave the sign. The pitcher nodded. Then the ball exploded out of his hand at nearly 98 miles per hour. The fastball ran violently inside. Too far inside. Ohtani barely had time to react before the pitch slammed directly into his upper arm. The sound echoed sharply through the stadium. Ohtani instantly stepped backward in pain while the crowd erupted into furious boos. From the Dodgers dugout, several players immediately stood up. The Brewers catcher said something toward Ohtani as he moved away from the plate. Nobody could clearly hear the words on the broadcast, but Ohtani suddenly stopped walking and turned his head back toward him. That was the first sign the situation was becoming dangerous. The next few seconds happened so quickly that even the replay struggled to capture everything cleanly. One Brewers infielder started shouting while aggressively moving toward the baseline near first. Another player followed behind him. Ohtani, still trying to shake off the pain in his arm, suddenly found himself surrounded by escalating tension before he even reached the bag. Then came the shove. One camera angle showed Ohtani getting hit from the side hard enough to lose his balance near the dirt. Another replay appeared to show a second Brewers player grabbing at his shoulder while players from both teams crashed into the area almost immediately afterward. The Dodgers dugout exploded onto the field. Mookie Betts sprinted directly into the middle of the confrontation. Max Muncy shoved one Milwaukee player backward while coaches screamed for players to separate. The umpires completely lost control of the situation for several moments. And right in the center of all of it was Shohei Ohtani, still down on one knee with trainers rushing toward him while fans inside the stadium screamed in anger. The feeling in the ballpark changed from tension to genuine outrage the moment the replay appeared on the giant screen. At first, people thought Ohtani had simply fallen during the chaos. But the slowed-down footage told a different story. Fans could clearly see aggressive movement continuing toward Ohtani even after he was already injured from the pitch. The broadcasters became unusually quiet while watching the replay themselves. One commentator finally broke the silence with a sentence that instantly spread across social media. "Milwaukee may have just crossed a dangerous line tonight." Within minutes, clips from every angle flooded the internet. Fans replayed the collision frame by frame. Some argued the pitch itself was accidental. Others believed it was intentional retaliation. But almost nobody defended what happened after Ohtani was hit. That was the detail making people furious. The confrontation did not stop when Ohtani went down. It escalated. Inside the Dodgers dugout, Dave Roberts looked angrier than anyone had seen him in months. Cameras repeatedly showed him staring toward the Brewers' side with his jaw clenched tightly while coaches tried calming players near the railing. Roberts rarely allows emotions to show publicly during games, which made his expression stand out even more. This did not look like frustration over baseball. It looked personal. Because this was not just another player lying in the dirt. This was Shohei Ohtani, the biggest star in the sport, the face of modern baseball, the player Major League Baseball had spent years building global attention around. And now millions of people had just watched him get dragged into one of the ugliest scenes of the season live on national television. Even after the game resumed, the atmosphere never recovered. Every Brewers player was booed aggressively for the rest of the night. Security guards positioned themselves near both dugouts as tensions continued building inning after inning. Every inside pitch caused reactions from the crowd. But strangely, Ohtani himself remained calm after returning to the dugout. He barely spoke. He sat quietly while trainers continued examining the swelling on his arm. Several Dodgers players repeatedly walked over to check on him, but Ohtani mostly kept his eyes down toward the floor. That image somehow made the entire situation feel even heavier. He did not look furious. He looked disappointed. After the final out, reporters rushed toward both clubhouses expecting emotional reactions. What they found inside Milwaukee's room was silence. Several Brewers players avoided reporters completely. One veteran reportedly changed clothes and left the stadium without speaking to media at all. The atmosphere felt tense, nervous, almost uncertain. On the opposite side, the Dodgers clubhouse carried a completely different energy. Players were angry. Coaches were furious. And yet most attention remained fixed on Ohtani himself. Reporters noticed swelling around the area where the pitch had connected, but more than the injury, people focused on the emotional weight surrounding him. This no longer felt like an ordinary baseball story. It felt like something much bigger. When Dave Roberts finally entered the press conference room, the atmosphere immediately changed. The room became completely silent before the first question was even asked. Roberts sat down slowly in front of the microphone, folded his hands together, and stared briefly toward the floor before looking up at reporters. Everyone already knew what was coming. A reporter finally asked whether Roberts believed the Brewers had crossed the line during the confrontation involving Ohtani. Roberts paused for several long seconds before answering. "There's a difference between emotional baseball and losing control of yourself," he said quietly. Nobody interrupted him. When a player has already taken a 98-mile-per-hour pitch and the situation continues escalating around him after that, it becomes something else. The room remained frozen while Roberts continued speaking. His voice never became louder. But somehow that made his words feel even more serious. Another reporter asked whether Roberts believed the actions toward Ohtani were intentional. This time Roberts leaned back slightly in his chair before answering carefully. "I think the league will review everything very closely." That sentence alone immediately exploded across sports media. Managers almost never speak that cautiously unless they expect major consequences. And according to reports emerging only hours later, Major League Baseball had already begun reviewing footage from multiple camera angles before players had even left the stadium. That almost never happens. Usually investigations take time. Usually the league waits until emotions cool down. But this situation moved unusually fast. And people around baseball immediately understood why. The footage looked terrible. By the next morning, every major sports network in America had opened with the same replay package. Ohtani getting hit. Players charging toward the baseline. The shove. The fall. The pile-up. And slowly, the conversation around baseball began changing from anger to disbelief. Reports started surfacing that MLB officials were considering historic disciplinary action connected to the incident. The word historic spread across social media almost instantly. Former players appearing on television looked shocked by how seriously the league was treating the situation. One analyst said something that captured the feeling around baseball perfectly. This stopped being about rivalry the moment Ohtani hit the dirt. That sentence stayed with people because it reflected exactly why the reaction had become so emotional nationwide. Shohei Ohtani is not viewed inside baseball the same way ordinary stars are viewed. He is not simply another MVP player. He is the global face of the sport. Stadiums sell out when he travels. International broadcasts change schedules around his games. Entire generations of young fans began watching baseball because of him. And because of that reality, the incident involving him instantly became much larger than Dodgers versus Brewers. It became a moment Major League Baseball itself could not afford to ignore. According to insiders, league officials became especially concerned by one replay angle that appeared to show aggressive actions continuing toward Ohtani even after he was already injured and disengaging from the situation. That detail reportedly played a major role in the investigation that followed. Then came the announcement that stunned baseball completely. Late the following afternoon, MLB released an official statement confirming that 3 Brewers players had received lifetime bans pending appeal for their roles in the confrontation involving Shohei Ohtani. For several moments after the announcement, even television anchors struggled to process what they were reading live on air. Lifetime bans are almost unheard of in modern professional baseball. The punishment immediately sent shockwaves across the entire sports world. Some fans argued the league had gone too far. Others believed MLB had no choice after what the replay footage showed. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. Baseball wanted to send a message that player safety had become more important than rivalry, emotion, or retaliation. Ironically, the calmest person involved in the entire story remained Shohei Ohtani himself. When reporters finally asked him directly about the punishments later that evening, Ohtani stood quietly near his locker and answered in short sentences. One reporter asked whether he believed the incident had been intentional. Ohtani lowered his eyes briefly before speaking. "I just want baseball to stay baseball." The room became completely silent after those words. Another reporter asked how he felt watching the situation spiral around him. Ohtani paused again before answering softly. "There are a lot of emotions during games. But everyone has responsibility too." Even after everything that happened, even after becoming the center of the biggest controversy in baseball, Ohtani still refused to attack anyone publicly. And somehow that made the entire moment feel even bigger. Over the following days, the replay continued spreading across the internet while debates consumed sports television non-stop. Was the punishment justified? Did MLB overreact? Should baseball police emotional confrontations more aggressively moving forward? But underneath every argument sat one terrifying reality the sport could not ignore. If Shohei Ohtani had suffered a serious injury during that confrontation, baseball itself might have changed overnight. That possibility frightened the league more than anything else. Because in one chaotic moment, under bright stadium lights with millions watching live, the sport suddenly realized how fragile everything really was. One reckless escalation. One emotional loss of control. One superstar hitting the dirt. And suddenly the entire baseball world stopped breathing at the exact same time.